Hello, everybody. My name is Austin, and welcome to another episode of Fearless Fermenting FAQ, where we answer your most burning fermentation-related questions. Today's question is, what containers should I be fermenting in? So we'll cover all that today, what you should and maybe shouldn't be using to do your live fermentation. But first, remember all of the resources available to you at Fermenters Club. We've got a website, fermentersklubb.com, where you can find over 100 recipes all about fermented foods. You can learn about the basics of what fermentation is, why it's good for us, etc., etc. A lot of free resources there. Of course, you're on the YouTube channel, so feel free to browse and binge watch some of our content. We also have online self-paced classes at our Fermenters Club Academy, where you can learn at your own pace. And once you sign up for a specific course, you get to use it and keep it forever and ever. We also have things like one-on-one coaching, if you're looking to up your fermentation game, as well as private team building events that are a lot of fun. If you're looking to build camaraderie among your group, whether that be your corporation, or a social group, give us a ring. These are all the things that we like to do to help you to help support our mission, which is to improve people's lives by teaching them why and how to ferment food, as well as to create communities that are connected through our guts. And one more thing is I wrote a book about 1.5 years ago called Fearless Fermenting. It's a textbook meets cookbook all about the wild world of fermentation. And it is available on Amazon as well as from our website in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. All right, housekeeping out of the way, let's dive into it. So there are lots of different fermentation container materials, of course. The microbes themselves typically do not really care. Once you give them the food and the environment in which they'll thrive, they're not too picky. However, for different reasons, which we'll get into, some materials are more practical, more suitable for fermentation than others. So we're going to cover glass, ceramic, plastic, wood, and even metal. So first off, glass. Now this is probably the ubiquitous, most inexpensive material, easy to find all over the world, comes in a variety of sizes. Now my go-to container, if you sort of did the desert island ferment, you only had one container to use, I would of course choose a wide mouth quart-sized mason jar. So that's what this one is. So 32 ounces, a little under a liter. It's just very versatile. And like I said, available pretty much everywhere. So this is a great choice. We also have lots of different sizes. So this one is an upcycled gallon-sized pickle jar that I'm currently using to make some escabeche. Of course, you could go smaller if you want, but from a practical perspective, I would say at least a quart size is the right choice for most folks. And when you're talking about things like making kombucha, you can use, of course, glass is a great choice, both for the primary fermentation as well as the secondary fermentation. So this is an example of a swing top bottle, glass bottle. That, what I mean by that is it's got a little clasp here that lets you tighten down the lid. And we'll actually cover a little bit more of the containers in which to do secondary kombucha fermentation specifically in a little bit. So those are all, glass is a great choice. It's non-porous, it's easy to clean. It doesn't impart anything to the fermenting medium. Next up is ceramic, also one of the best materials to ferment in. And of course, I'm talking about earthen materials that are fired, whether that's terracotta or clay or ceramic. And those all work very well, again, for the same reasons. They're non-porous, they last a long time. Now my go-to as far as an example of a ceramic crock, well, I've got a lot of them actually. So here's one that's actually an artisanal crock that was hand thrown. and it's been glazed. It's beautiful. And it actually also has a water seal, which is a design that allows you to ferment safely and easily. What I mean by that is there's a little lip here that you can put water in, and then the lid that fits inside the lip. And what that does is it creates a seal that lets gas escape, because during fermentation, gas likes to build up, and doesn't let fresh air in. So ceramic is a great choice. This is a good, this was about a 4-liter crock. But my other go-to is, for ceramic anyway, is these 2.5 or about 2.25 gallon water dispensers that I repurpose into a kombucha crock. So this is a great container. Again, it's long-lived, it's easy to use. It's a little heavy, but it's not too heavy. And in this case, kombucha is a good choice for, it's a good choice for kombucha because it's wide, and the SCOBY that grows in kombucha likes a wide surface area. So you can usually find these pretty much anywhere. I find them used on your favorite online marketplace site. And I've gone ahead and replaced usually you'll find a plastic spigot. I found a stainless steel spigot just to sort of upgrade it a little bit. So making ceramic a really good choice. You could ferment other things in here as well, but typically it's for beverages is how I use it for, such as kombucha. And you want to make sure that the container is lead, or that the paint and the glaze is lead free. So I would just, if you're looking at something that's very antique, let's say before the 1970s, I would probably not use it for fermentation, just to be on the safe side. The older glazes that they use may have used lead, may have had lead in them, of course, which over time can degrade, can chip. And when we're putting something acidic, like something to be fermented, that's just not a good combination for getting that stuff into your food. So I would typically avoid those. Plastic. Now this is, plastic is a reality in our age. So this was a quote or a comment I heard from one of my mentors, Sandor Katz. He's like, we live in an age that has plastic. So he's right, it's everywhere, and therefore it has its advantages and disadvantages. So if you are going to use plastic, make sure that it's a food grade container. So what I mean by that is, here's an example of a 5-gallon plastic bucket that is, right now I'm just storing flour in it, but sometimes I will use these for if I have to make a large batch. So just make sure if you're going to use a plastic bucket that it does say food grade on it. Don't get something that's, from your hobby store, your hardware big box store, for example. Make sure it's food grade. And then when you are using it, I always try to use something that's non-abrasive when I'm cleaning it, because what that'll do is that'll prevent scratches and micro scratches from being on the inside of the container, which can harbor microbes. Those could be good or bad, but you want to keep stuff as clean as possible. So you can use plastic. Now, typically what I'll do is, if I'm fermenting something in plastic, I will quickly transfer it to a glass container or something that I like more, ceramic, for example, rather than sort of storing it in the plastic as well. So minimize contact as much as you can, but plastic is still a choice. And I've also been known to use plastic bags, like the zip top bags, if you're making stuff like tempeh. It's actually a pretty good medium. It sort of keeps things into a certain shape. And it's a very short culturing period of usually only about 2 days. So, so that's another choice that I've found. All right, next up is wood. So food grade vessels like wine or whiskey barrels actually make excellent vessels for fermentation. This is a little snippet from a project I did a few years ago, where we took a wooden barrel, a wooden wine barrel, and actually turned it into a sauerkraut barrel, and made a good amount of sauerkraut, probably about 20 to 30 pounds, and it turned out excellent. So wood, again, also has the pores from the natural material, and it can actually store those good bacteria. So if you are going to use a wooden vessel, I would typically sort of dedicate one to, okay, this is going to be our vegetable barrel, or this is going to be our kombucha barrel. If you start to cross them over, you'll probably find that there's a lot of flavor carryover. So not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe you don't want your kombucha to taste like pickles or kimchi, or maybe you do, I don't know. So typically once you select a fermentation container that's made of wood, you usually keep that same style of food in it. Now this is again, the snapshot is a 55-gallon barrel. I'm still on the search for something a little bit more practical for day to day, like I would probably use a 1 to 2 gallon barrel. I'd probably dedicate one for kombucha and maybe one for things like barrel-aged kraut. Now, next material is metal. This is a little controversial. I would say in general, it's not really recommended for fermentation. Most metal containers that we use for, say, cooking can react with the acids that are created during fermentation. So I typically would avoid using metal at all. However, there is, again, there are a few exceptions here. This is a stainless steel grade bottle that's used for brewing. And it's also got the swing top design. So there's a very specific grade of stainless steel that I would say is suitable for things like kombucha. In fact, this came from a kombucha brewery, I believe. So beer brewing uses it, and it's also suitable for kombucha. But definitely would not want to use something like a pot that you would cook in, even though if it's stainless steel, just not good. The acids that are generated during fermentation, again, can build up and leach some of the materials out of the metal, causing you trouble. So metal, again, used in limited amounts. Now there are people that say you should never have metal utensils come in contact with your ferments. My personal opinion is incidental contact with, let's say, using metal tongs, or if you're using a spoon to stir kombucha, is okay. But again, with the caveat that you don't want to necessarily have long-term exposure, long-term contact with metal. And then there are, of course, some all-natural choices I've thought about over the years. Like, for example, I've used banana leaves to make tempeh. We talked about using the plastic bags, but traditionally in the country where tempeh comes from, in Indonesia, it's a tropical country, so they have access to a lot of bananas. So banana leaves are plentiful, and they make a good little wrapper for incubating the tempeh. And I think that's about it. I scratch my head to think of another natural material, but if you know of a material, or if you have a question about a material that we didn't cover, feel free to leave a comment and we'll get back to you. And I think that's about it. That covers our fermenting container journey. Oh yeah, that's right. We said we were going to cover secondary fermentation. So if you are making kombucha, the idea is you want to establish a good amount of pressure during the secondary fermentation so that carbonation builds up. So here's a list of various container types. Like I said, the very best would be something like this: a swing top glass container, or again in stainless steel model if you have access to that. Those work well. Beer growlers also typically make good containers for the buildup of pressure. Again, here's another. This is about a half-gallon model that's got a swing top that I got from a brewery over the years. Again, if you're upcycling or recycling plastic bottles, they do work well actually for capturing the pressure, which is what you want to do when we're fermenting. But again, if you're leaning towards you don't want to use plastic, then find another material such as glass. A recycled glass bottle, such as one in which you've got kombucha originally came in, let's say you got a store-bought brand, also works well. So there's a glass bottle from a well-known brand in the US called GT's. I love this size. I actually use these all the time. This is a 3-pint, 48 ounces. And it's got a plastic cap, but you know that the cap, you know that this is effective because you bought kombucha in it, and kombucha, fresh kombucha should have a lot of carbonation. So I love reusing kombucha bottles to make my own homemade brew. Now, what I would not recommend actually for kombucha is a mason jar, because these are designed really to keep, once you pressure can them, to keep pressure in. And so they are not necessarily designed with the seal that, as pressure builds up internally, sort of keeps pressure in. So this doesn't make a great container if your goal is to build up carbonation, which, if you're doing a secondary kombucha fermentation, is usually the case. So I would avoid these unless, again, carbonation is not an issue, and then you can use those for your kombucha fermentation. And again, find out a lot more about kombucha fermentation. Check out our other videos in our playlists, as well as our article on the blog. All right, that about covers it. Again, feel free to check out all of our free resources online, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching, and if you like this kind of stuff, please remember to like, subscribe, and share this video, as well as leave a comment. So until next time, happy fermenting, and I will see you later.